Welcome to the second part of this 4-part chronicle of my build of Minicraft's Titanic model. In this part we're going to look at building the first class accommodation, the funnels and the cables for the funnels, and cutting and installing the railings. This is the next part of the deck with the stern there. Some of the parts have a reinforced section on the sprue, so it's important that you cut the part out and leave the bit of reinforcing behind. As you can see here, I'm cutting the part out and leaving the reinforcing behind, and it's a good idea to use a sharp knife with several passes to separate the part. This reduces the chances of damaging the part when removing it from the sprue. You can also use bits of clear plastic from consumer goods packaging as windows for the accommodation. And we're putting on some of the superstructure here. It's marked whether it's on the left or the right, port and starboard, so that helps you to know what to place where. So there's the front of the bridge going on. Now this is the instructions for the top level of the ship. This is upside down, and microfilaments are inserted through the holes there, which will form the rigging for the funnels. So here is that top deck upside down. With the first few, I use cotton attached to the filaments. That gives it a nice strong anchor and ensures that the filament won't be pulled through the hole. I get the cotton ready first with a little hoop and then put the wire through it. So I'm tying the wire on there. Bit of glue to hold it all in place. Trim it. Goes through the hole. Glued in place. Now, for many of the bits of microfilament, they actually are doubled over, so I use a strip of styrene as an anchor. So there's one piece of wire which is being threaded through both holes and is held in place by the styrene. So there are all the microfilaments hanging down. And there are the anchors in place. Turn it right side up. Get all the filaments out of the way. And install it. So crew's quarters, officers' quarters go on next. So here's an incorrectly labelled part on the instructions. It says it's H5, but in fact it's G24. So I use a couple of Sharpie pens for the skylights above the grand staircase. I'm using a white paint pen here for the skylight at the very top of the staircase. There it is. And it has a couple of locator pins there which go into the structure underneath. Here they are. And I used the black Sharpie to do the frame of the skylight immediately above the staircase, which I'm just installing there. So there's the first skylight. And the skylight above it going on now. Moving on to the funnels, again another misnamed part. It's C13, not C10. And there G12 goes into there. Now the instructions incorrectly show how to create the vents such as H19 and G33, H19 and G25. It has them sort of round the wrong way. The vents are meant to look like this, and indeed that is how they fit together, and they face towards the stern. So each of the funnels is slightly different, so you can't get them confused or they won't fit, and so I discreetly numbered each of them using the paint pen. Now this is a cutter for polystyrene. Some of the parts have to be moulded with heat, and so I just held them above the cutter and so that the heat makes them flexible. The parts cannot touch the cutter, otherwise they will melt. But if you hold them just about half a centimetre or so above, the heat will make them flexible and you can manipulate them. This is a ladder for a funnel. So I hold it on with super glue and give it a spray with accelerator, and there it is. This is piping for another one of the funnels, and again holding the cutter over it, warming up the plastic so it becomes malleable. Need to get the angles right, a bit of trial and error so that the angle is right, so that it will actually go up against the funnel. This is the colour paint I use for the funnels. Black paint for the top of the funnel, masked off, and there are the 4 funnels with the piping repainted. Another incorrectly labelled part there, should be G23 not G28. Using a white paint pen for some of the edging on parts at the top of the ship, and a brush for others. Now here the instructions have part I-10 with 2 holes, but when it's upside down it only has 1 hole. 2 wires come out of that 1 hole, so it's a matter of deciding which hole it is. As you can see, there's 2 wires coming out of the 1 hole there. So it's the hole right in the middle, and the other hole behind it, the one off center, needs to be filled in so that it is removed. Another quirk with the instructions is regarding some of the benches near the stern. These 2 seem to be too close together, but I let it go. Those 2, it's unclear quite if the positioning is correct, and certainly that one there doesn't exist. So leave it up to you to decide what you would like to do. I based those comments on some of the YouTube virtual tours of the Titanic, the links to which I've included in the description below. I found those videos incredibly useful, and I warmly recommend them to you. So that is all the pieces at the very top of the ship. Some of the lower deck protrudes out, which may look odd but is in fact quite accurate. It's what happened on the real ship. Now we're going on to the railings, using a nice strong tile as the base. Broad blade for cutting the photo etched items. A file, diamond file from Tamiya. Calipers for measuring the distances for the railings. Some Tamiya tweezers. And a vise for bending photo etched parts. And some scissors for cutting photo etched pieces. And a wax pencil, helpful for picking up photo etched pieces. Like so. Just note on the photo etched sheet, there's all the details there of which railing is which, so be aware of that for knowing which ones to cut out. The number of railings per piece. So now I'm going to remove one of the railings using the knife with the broad blade. I've already primed it, which is why the photo etched material is white and not bronze colour. Hold it in the tweezers and file away the burr. So I'm going to be using a piece there that's going to form the contours. Filing off the burrs. Make sure the tweezers are right at the end of the railing, otherwise it will buckle. So I'm using the calipers here to measure the distance, putting the railing into the vise at the appropriate spot. And bending it. It's important to use a vise because then everything stays square. If you just use your hands, everything gets buckled. Yes, you can use your hands for a little bit of fine tuning like this, but use a vise for most of the work. Again, measuring the distance using the calipers. Here I'm just using my fingers because it's a small bend, and this is quite tricky. There now has to be a curve, so I just use the handle of a craft knife. And there is the railing coming together. Measure the next distance with the calipers. And again. And finally, there it is, ready to be glued into place. Now do check the videos I've included down below, because there are some railings that are not included in the instructions, such as this one. There's enough surplus material on the photo etched sheet to allow you to do this. And some of the railings need to be painted brown at the top to represent the banisters. Well, that concludes part 2. We'll see you in part 3. Please like and subscribe.